My name is Justin Kosakin. This is my confession.
Since a kid where I lived seemed destitute. Every picture at my crib was covered in residue. Blistered fingers, syringes, and metal spoons. That pain made me driven and resolute. Cause at that time, daddy was a janitor.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
I got started in the roofing industry in 2008. A buddy of mine, his name's Steve Kaganovsky, he started selling door-to-door roofs, and he recruited me over. But initially, I wasn't receptive. It wasn't until about 60 to 90 days later when he showed up at my house with a new truck, a new watch, all the new stuff. I immediately sized myself up against him, and I thought if he could do it without question, I could do it. So I literally put in my 1 week notice at work, and I started selling roofs. For as long as I can remember, I've been an extremely competitive person. It's just my natural being. In the second grade, I remember on the playground in elementary school, I saw this kid and he was just sitting by himself, kicking like one of those big rubber balls in the air. The kid wasn't even looking at me, but I was like, he's trying to challenge me. So I walked up to him and I said, listen, man, I for sure can kick the ball higher than you. And then he challenged me. And I'll never forget, I was very humbled when I gave it my all and I could not kick the ball higher than him. And that was it for me. His name's Logan Aiden. We became the best of friends.
When you watch games like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, you don't see too many others in the game that have that will to win. And that's something that Justin had. He would always challenge the older kids because he knew they were better. Even when he came into football, freshman, he's playing with the varsity kids just because they were bigger, faster. In his personality, he wanted to be the best at everything. He just couldn't beat me in one-on-one stuff.
Most of the people in my inner circle, the ones that I choose to associate with, are usually people that are masters of their craft. They're people that are much better than me at what I do. And I love it because these people and these individuals I have a lot of respect for, but it creates this huge internal fire within me that keeps me driven and keeps me motivated and keeps me moving forward. Growing up, I was a hot mess. Emotionally, in my friendships, in my family, it was just a hot mess. I did a lot of drugs, did a lot of alcohol. I burned a lot of relationships. I went to a couple treatment centers. And by the age of 21, I had hit rock bottom. And rock bottom was extremely painful to arrive at, but it was the best thing in my life because when you have nothing, you have no friends, no family, no one will communicate with you, there's really only one direction you can go, and that's up. And so I realized the root problem of my life was that I was so selfish. I was constantly taking from all of my relationships. I was taking from life to the point where I had nothing left. So from there, when I realized that, I made a wholehearted, uncompromising commitment to do whatever it took to give to life. And as a result, I had a transformative experience where that particular person is no longer here with us today. "2008 was my first year in the door-to-door roofing sales industry. I had no sales trainer. I was self-taught, which there's pros and cons to. I think one of the best advantages for me by not having a sales trainer was I didn't learn someone else's bad habits at the doors. For me, it was like a blank canvas. I was free to just kind of figure it out. So my approach was I took a notebook to the doors and I literally would write down what my pitch was. And it was so simple at first. I had, hey, my name is Justin, can I look at your roof? The fascinating thing was when I would knock on the door, I completely would forget what I was going to say, and people would slam the door on my face and threaten to call the police, and I would just scratch it off my notebook, and I'd say, okay, this didn't work. After time, I looked at it as a mathematical equation. I saw that with, say, for example, a white male in his mid-30s living in an upper-class house, I had a certain pitch developed based on trial through error, and I would have a different pitch, say for a married couple in their 40s that were Asian. So door-to-door sales for me, I looked at it as a mathematical equation. In each door that I knocked, I just had to crack the code, if you will. And so it became like a fun type of experience for me every day. In terms of being self-taught, for me, I think of the words of Dale Carnegie. He says, you cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself. And for me, that was massively beneficial because what it did was it revealed to me and unleashed this enthusiasm and this drive to become successful no matter what. I wanted to start my own company because I got to the point where it was the next logical progression of my career. Meaning, initially, I needed to figure out and master the formula for knocking doors. Once I mastered that, it was about sales recruiting. Then once I mastered sales recruiting, it was about developing salesmen. And so the progression just naturally happened. The next step for me was to start my own company. And when I started my own company, I was very ignorant in the sense of I had no idea what I was doing. I think paradoxically, that's one of the only times ignorance will actually work in your favor because I couldn't overthink the process. I just had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of drive, and I think having those two things in replacement of experience is really one of the things that helped me excel as far as growing the business.
So early on in Justin and I's relationship, one, I could tell that he had this fire in him and this drive that I don't think I've ever actually seen before. He was working with another company at the time, but I knew that wouldn't last long. I knew he was ready to go start his own thing.
At the beginning, the core group for Able was really just 3 people. It was myself, my wife, Tiffany Kosakin, and Cody Dorschel, and he was our first sales manager. And other than having an extreme amount of enthusiasm and a grandiose vision for what was to come, that's all we really had. We didn't have any money, we didn't have any money in the savings account, but we were driven, and that's all we needed looking back on things.
Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, right? You have to have that burning desire. And that was something that was very deep-seated in our belief, right? We launched Able in Idaho, but then when we left Idaho and went to Arizona, we were all sleeping on the floor on blow-up mattresses in some lady's house that we rented in Arizona. So there was really nothing to do but look at the primary goal, that burning desire. We got our few key leaders in the beginning, and then from there, it just went crazy.
In terms of our jobs, 95% of our jobs are residential jobs. Like in Georgia, you got those nasty 13, 12, 2-story roofs. You have in Virginia, some very similar roofs. Minneapolis, we did a bunch of roofs, 10, 12 pitches. Got to replace the decking and subs don't want to show up because of it. But that was our traditional roof. It was like your 30-square residential house. And we did a couple churches here and there, but predominantly we were a residential roofing company. For me, Able represented 2 things, enthusiasm and success. Not success in the sense of material. My definition of success was, you can measure my success by the amount of people that I made successful. I think because we focused on this particular definition of success and other people carried it and applied it in their own life, this was the key ingredient to the winning formula of Able. And this is one of the reasons why we got so big so quickly, is because we were invested mentally in helping other people become successful.
When we were launching Able, time moved both fast and slow. You're going through this hypergrowth phase where when you look back on those times, they seemed so much longer than they did. It's like Justin and I would be talking, we'd be referencing something and he'd be like, yeah, that was a year. And we look back and it was only a 2-month window, but it felt like so long because you're grinding and you're steadfast on this goal and you're just continuously going after it. The time warps itself. It's both extremely slow and extremely fast at the same time. It's profound.
The amount of jobs we were getting, man, I remember we went from just the 3 of us and we would get maybe 5 jobs a week to 9 months later, we were averaging about 60 contracts a day. We were building 30 roofs a day, 6 days a week. So we grew really, really fast in contrast to what most companies grow to.
People were just coming out of the woodwork. There was people calling nonstop, like, we want to come work with you guys. We want to come out there. There was people coming from across the country, like just showing up, and they were like, we want to work here. What do you guys do again? That is how we knew that the culture was so good that people didn't even know what they were going to do. They just wanted to come, work, do whatever they had to do to be a part of Able.
We wanted to have a face-to-face interaction, face-to-face relationship where there was real palpable energy, transcending from the reps to us, from us to the reps. And so it became a necessity for the group, like, hey, we got to do weekly meetings twice a week. And then on top of that, the managers of their own individual groups were having daily meetings, right? Daily get together before they go out into the field. That way, the same message was being transcended across the entire organization on multitudes of levels.
So I first met in the Able team back in the summer of 2016, and it came at a great time in my life. I was actually looking for an opportunity that was better than myself, and a good friend of mine messaged me saying like, hey, come get rich with me in Georgia. And I told him like, hey, I'm not doing network marketing with you again. And he says, not network marketing, it's actually door-to-door sales. And at the time I was like, that's even worse. So he actually told me that he actually made over $20,000 in his first 30 days. And I told him, if you send me the copies of those checks, I will come out there immediately. And he did. And a couple of days later, I found myself here at this airport meeting Justin and the rest of the team. And in that first week, I sold 8 or 9 roofs, and it felt good. I felt like I was a part of a team that was growing. These guys and girls were working out of a basement of a house, and it just felt like the right place to be, that everyone was building something that was great. And so I told my wife, I gave her a call and said, hey, it looks like we're gonna be packing our stuff up and we're gonna be moving out to Georgia. And it was a little bit harder to get her to convince her to do that, but you know what? She believed in me, and she said, okay, let's do it.
People come for the money, but they stay for the culture. That was something that we really understood early on. Okay, not only are these people away from their family and homes, but there's going to be a lot of things that call them back to their family and homes. When you're on the road, there's a lot of reasons to go back home. So we needed to build a foundation and a family within the company that these people felt like they were a part of, not only the company itself, but a part of the rise, a part of the buildup, a part of something bigger than themselves.
When I think about going to a meeting at work, I'm not like, yeah, let's go to a meeting at work. But they were. Every Saturday morning, they were showing up because they wanted to, not because they had to. And then before you know it, we have 100 people. And it's seriously wild. There's people everywhere and roofs being sold, and the energy is high. And just to watch how excited Justin was probably one of my favorite things, is he knew that he had something special going on. And so it was just amazing to watch.
Listen, at the peak of Able, the energy level, listen, man, there's a lot of big companies out there, a lot of respect for you guys, but what Cody and I created, when him and I came together, the synergy that was created as far as the culture, man, we were on fire, okay? I think if you were to kind of put it up and sum it up in 2 words, it was let's go. Everyone was fired up, everyone screaming at the top of their lungs, coming to groups, and we didn't have to force anyone to show up. They were so on fire that they were excited to show up on a daily basis.
The sales meetings were crazy. We had 60, sometimes, I think at one point we had almost like 100 people packed in the basement of this giant house, just screaming and yelling, and it was just everybody get pumped up in the morning. It was tons of fun.
You have all these unique, different personalities all converging in one location. Just to be around all those different types of personalities from all over the country, there was such top talent there that emerged from that sales incubator. It was a moment in time that won't be duplicated, I don't think, ever again. And I was just glad to be a part of it.
When Able was at its peak, it was the best job that I ever had. It was the best work environment because it wasn't focused on one person's individual success. It was focused on everybody helping each other achieve. We had our weekly meetings. Our weekly meetings weren't just about how to get sales. It was about growth and development, how to become better at not only what you do, but as a person individually. For people to have an opportunity not just to make money, but to actually better themselves while they're making money, it's unique, I think, in any industry, but especially in construction.
What made Able different from a lot of companies I talked to, because I talked to a lot of roofing companies, a lot of restoration companies, you name it. The atmosphere was such an upbeat, uplifting, kind of like an atmosphere you would see at like a Tony Robbins seminar or something like that. That makes a difference when you have that kind of environment, salespeople that really are go-getters. Other companies, they're not like that so much.
When I was watching Able grow, what really seemed different to me was first its energy. It was really vibrant. There was a lot of training. The people that were part of the Able Restoration group were incredibly motivated, and fully inspired to help other people.
What made Able different was they weren't necessarily concerned about themselves. They were always concerned about the network or the team. I found Justin extremely humble, giving, and kind, sometimes to the point where I thought was it to his own detriment. But little did I know, where you give, you always receive tenfold. And I've seen that in Justin with everything he does.
What made Able different was their loyalty, to their sales guys, the spiffs, the incentives, the dinners. Took that model and we put it to work also, inside of my business. Really investing in people is your number one best investment. And that's what Justin did, with Able. And I noticed, deep down, he really wanted to spend the time with his guys and grow something very big, and he did.
Hi everybody, my name is Kenny Brooks, AKA Funny Salesman. Probably remember me back in the day from my viral video. If you haven't seen it, just Google door-to-door comedian. If you say something bad about me, just put in Chinese language so my mom won't know. I met Justin back in 2017. They paid me to speak for their company, basically like sales training. When I got there, I just fell in love with the foundation they had, the atmosphere. Everybody was like, family oriented. It was all like love. It didn't even look like a company to me. So that's what really got my attention with Able.
So I first came across Justin and the Able Restoration Company through Facebook posts. Every day I would see different people posting online and tagging, and I'd see all their Spodio results. And every day they had 40, 50, 60 signed contracts a day, 1,000 door knocks that day somehow, which I thought was impossible at the time. So I started actually reaching out to Justin, just asking little questions, not about that, but kind of like digging slowly, so I could try to find out some of the secrets that he had going on over there at Able Restoration.
I'd look on Facebook every couple days or whatnot and see what those guys were doing. I just thought to myself, what in the world? Like, what are these guys doing? How do they have this culture? So it really kind of made me want to dig in and figure out what we were doing to be able to have that same culture. Really looked up to those guys, what they had going on over there.
One of the very first videos I saw of Able was actually a bunch of young people just talking about this opportunity they were pitched, where their life was and where their life went after they joined this group. It was more of a movement than it was a company. It was these young people being taught really how to take control of their financial life, how to take control of their professional life. And they were so excited and all moving kind of in unison towards this goal. I just wasn't seeing that in really any industry, but specifically in our industry. It was more about how to get contracts, how to knock doors, and it was more numbers and project focus. And they were the first ones I really saw that were focused on the people and developing the people and leadership within that group.
So we had built such a strong foundation with our culture and with our reps that we never had a single rep of ours get poached by another company. Here are these people that are just following the vision, but they're willing to disregard other opportunities because they're so happy with where they're at and so happy to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Did we think the success of Able would continue? Without question. Primarily because of the mindset. We had a mantra of we are able to overcome any problem or any obstacle. So for us, it just was unfathomable that we could fail. I mean, failure itself, the word was eradicated from the culture's vocabulary. And I think that was of a huge detriment to us. Because of our blind spots, we had no idea that the fall of our company was looming around the corner. And because of that, we didn't have the necessary precautions set up and we weren't prepared for what was to come. How I think the industry thinks of the fall of Able, I mean, honestly, I think it's a faint and forgotten memory. I don't think we were around long enough for us to make a long-lasting impact where like our presence echoes through time, if you will. The other piece too is most people have the attention span less than a goldfish nowadays. So it wouldn't even make sense for a lot of people to even remember who we were. Listen, Able fell really only for two reasons. The most important reason, number one, is because of my lack of leadership, okay? Number two, it was my lack of experience. I just didn't know the route we were on and I didn't know how to save it. So I think if I had a higher level of leadership and I had more experience, I think I would have been able to turn it around, but I didn't. And because of that, I take wholehearted responsibility for the downfall of my company.
So I think the first few feelings of, I wouldn't even call it uncertainty, right? Because we battle with uncertainty all the time. It's always uncertain. But the first few signs of danger came about when we weren't able to start capping the jobs that we needed because of a myriad of side trades that were still out and about, and you could kind of just see these side trades fingers curling in like long tentacles, and so you could see it off in a distance that it was coming, but capital was still flowing. We were still bringing in a lot of volume, a lot of new jobs, so it was hard to see, but it was there.
Man, honestly, when Cody left, it was a shocker to me. I knew we were having problems with the company, like all companies, but I didn't know it was to the magnitude where Cody was gonna leave. So when he showed up to the office one day, bright and smiley like he always is, he said he's leaving. I think I was like a deer in headlights at the time, and I didn't know really what to say or how to respond, and I just kept moving forward. So I was taken off guard for sure.
So I left Able because when we started it, the vision was so strong. Justin and I's relationship was palpable. We saw the same vision, we had the same plans, and those things didn't necessarily change. However, my skill set was never in AR or production or the finances of everything. So when the company started to go under, and I could see that it was going under, and we were all working, as a group for, 6 months to try and get this boulder pushed back up the hill, I realized that my heart wasn't in it anymore. I had, the excitement was gone. It was mostly dread. There was a pit in my stomach every day that I woke up. Justin and I, we weren't fighting, but we weren't always seeing eye to eye on it. And it just seemed like my time for the company had passed. It seemed like I wasn't really adding a ton of value anymore. And I certainly wasn't happy. And so I felt a little bit disconnected from a company that I helped build. And I felt like it was my wake-up call to move on.
Today, I have an extreme amount of gratitude for what Cody and I did together then, because I promise you, it's second to none to whatever the other companies are doing now today. I promise you. And now, Cody and I are fine. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Cody. He's a great dad, great husband, and I think he's gonna do some amazing things in the industry. So I still call him a friend today. The nail in the coffin for Able was a few different things. There were a few different things that I had in place that was extremely detrimental to our company's cash flow. And I had no idea that it would be the demise of the company. Number one, it was our commission pay structure, or the payouts that we did. So for each salesman, we paid them a percentage off the top, and they were paid per check, okay? Number two, the sales managers we had what was called like an override. So they were paid a percentage based on the development of their salesmen. My problem and what I should have changed was that sales managers should have been paid at the end. But instead I paid them at the beginning per check also. Not in whole, but they got a percentage of the first check. The last two things was I was paying what was called a set fee. So there was a company in a different state where I paid them 5% per check that was turned in. And I had an investor at the time, and he got paid 5% on the first check. So on the first check of each job, we were paying out 20 to 25% off the top. So it was already gone. A lot of the projects that we were working on, they were extremely older roofs. So from an insurance perspective, a lot of the jobs we only got, say, 30% up front to do a job. So we're already in a deficit. Now, starting a job where we're financially already in a deficit, now you take away 25%, little did I know that we had no chance to make it. It was never going to work unless we had some type of gigantic cash flow infusion. And looking back on it, I had no idea. Now I understand how it works, but it was a painful experience.
Everything was great until it wasn't. And what I started seeing was we had really serious issues with production. We did so much volume as a sales force, it was very difficult to keep production on point.
It wasn't like Abel, like the Titanic hit a rock and the boat sank. It was more like a slow leak. It really never ended, it just kind of migrated. But in those ending days, even though people were still having challenges as far as dealing with customers and the bills and all the frustrations that came along with it, the energy and the family aspect and the environment of Abel, people were still holding on, doing whatever that we could to make this thing happen. And you don't see that with a lot of companies. Usually in a company, if something was going wrong, if the company had to postpone your check a week, whatever challenge it was, most people jump ship. But a lot of people were just holding on strong. And that was really just the description of Abel and what the environment was like.
I was in Minnesota and I got some news that Cody Dorschel had left the company. And we're like, oh, it's kind of weird that he would do that because everything's so great right now. Another storm was going to hit. I think it was Hurricane Irma hit down in Naples, Florida. And Justin had called me up. He's like, hey, you want to go to Florida? I was like, I'm packing my bags right now. Because I'm just down to go anywhere. I just want to see the world, Yeah, it was just a really kind of odd scenario looking back at it. We were peaking. And then in my mind, I thought we were just going to another storm. And then next thing you know now we're running with this company now. But at the end of the day, it didn't bother me.
I heard Abel was going to move to Florida. I heard they were killing it, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. I didn't understand it, but they were nowhere to be found. I didn't get it. When I stopped seeing some of the Abel content coming out, I actually reached out to Justin to see how things were going, and we actually connected in real life, not just on social media. And I got to know him. I got to know him as a person and see him operate, and it was really incredible. It was nice to see that the myth actually matched the man. And since then, I've got to see him do some pretty incredible stuff.
All of a sudden, Abel was gone. They had a ton of posts on Facebook. You would see them all over, the guys and gals of Abel, getting out in the field and working, and then poof, it was gone. I had later talked with Justin months later, and I asked him, what's going on? I figured I'd get rid of any speculation, rumor, and doubt and just ask Justin himself. And, what I learned was that with massive success in any business, there's trials, there's challenges, and as owners and operators, a lot of times we take it all on our own shoulders and we try to fix everything ourselves and handle it all ourselves. And it seems that Justin encountered the same, and those challenges were just too much, and he had to move on to other things.
Seeing all of the things that we had to get done, all these little side trades on all these files, and there was a sea of red folders. And we were like, this is insane. This is so much, but we can fix this if we work really hard and we just need to ask for help. But somehow things got worse and we didn't know what to do.
If things had worked out and we put more emphasis on productions than we did on sales, Abel would for sure by far be the largest roofing company in the United States, because we were probably 10 months into it, had over 100 reps, and everybody was making money and everybody was happy. You cannot describe that feeling of having those Saturday meetings and what the energy was like in those rooms. Everyone was happy. The culture was amazing. There would be no one to ever duplicate that feeling or recreate the atmosphere. And that's what made Abel different.
The energy at the end, listen, if you have a culture where you're on fire and there's enthusiasm and excitement, there's one thing that will distinguish that entire flame, and that's called fear. Fear is what permeated through the company, and it was paralyzing. Our vision went from grandiose to grandiose visions to it was so small and we were so afraid. The fear itself, what it manifested into was a lot of rumors. People would speculate about things. Stealing started to happen, be it poaching of the salesmen. So to go from extreme enthusiasm and excitement to fear with the majority of the culture, it was devastating to watch it happen, especially because I couldn't control it. There was nothing I could do to reverse it. Ultimately, we had to close the doors, and it was a brutal experience. It was one of the most humbling things I've ever had to do in my life. And to watch it die and to watch it just crumble It was so painful. And the only way that I can describe it, it's like the loss of a child. I lost a son early years ago. So that's the only thing I can compare it to. It's like, it's the loss of a child. I put everything I had into it, and knowing that you can't do anything to save it and watching it fall, most painful thing I've ever been through. Our final attempts to save and resurrect Abel, if you will, was we partnered with a company in Florida for Hurricane Irma. And man, we thought we did it. We sold $36 million in 6 months. And I think because of my mind state that was full of fear and anxiety, I chose to partner with someone, and it just didn't work out, So we never got paid, and that was inevitably the last stop for Abel. That was the last trip. So our chapter came to an end in Florida in 2018.
Prairies are unique in terms of the ecosystem it provides to all the wildlife and plants that coexist within it. It's unique in terms of the methods nature uses to maintain natural order, self-preservation, and to ensure the longevity of the native life. Over time, invasive species can quickly outgrow native plants in the spring, blocking the light they need to thrive. Burning knocks back these invasive species in some woody bushes and trees that manage to creep in, giving the native plants that belong on the prairie time to emerge in full sunlight. Burning also helps stimulate growth of new plants. Regularly applied fire can reduce the intensity of an unplanned fire. Without fire, leaf litter builds up over time, providing lots of fuel. If an unplanned fire should occur, it would be much more severe and harder to control where a lot of fuel has been built up. Over time, dead plant material accumulates on prairies. Dead plants have within them an abundance of nutrients that are massively beneficial to the soil and essential for its survival. Prairie fires help those decaying plant materials decompose faster, and as a result, releases rich nutrients that are locked up in the decaying plants. The release of those nutrients help the prairie thrive and are essential to its survival and all the wildlife within its ecosystem.
So here is the 3 big lessons that I learned for the fall of Abel. Number 1, cash flow. You have to understand cash flow. You have to understand the comp plans. You have to understand depreciation for projects. Cash flow is such a big one. Number 2 is people. What I mean by that is I learned that what people say and what people do are 2 different things. So I've had to come to realize that when it comes to business, people are there to get what they want, right? And I didn't realize that. I thought I lived in a delusional world, if you will. So I had to come to grips with what reality is as far as doing business with people. People do not have your best intentions. I promise you, when it comes to business, they do not have your best intentions. Don't play with yourself, right? This is business. And that's what I've had to tell myself. I've had to come to realization with. Number 3, and I think one of the most important things, is processes. I have become militant as far as having to know the process of how things work. And if I look at a process and I can't understand how it works, it's not a good process. Listen, I learned a lot of life lessons, a lot of business lessons, but to me, those are the top 3 things that I'll take away from my experience at the Abel Restoration Group.
Thomas, I got it. Listen, since I shared my blind spots with everyone, I think it would be a pretty cool idea if everyone we're interviewing were to share their blind spots also. I think it could have a pretty big impact.
The first blind spot, I would say, would be patience. I started off with this great company. I was so eager to go into business for myself that I left in under a year. I left that company, and there was so much more to learn. And unfortunately, I had to learn all those lessons the hard way. You know, if you start with a great company, stick with them for a while. Learn everything you can and be patient and build with those people.
when you are building a team, it's not just about a business where you have to do this every day, you have to do that. It's more about coming together as a family, which is kind of what I've seen on a lot of the Able posts every day. You see all the positive energy and the family vibe, and that really kickstarts the company and gets them going. If you're able to bring that culture into your business and not make it a business where you gotta be like, hey, where's my Spodio report for the week?
One piece of advice I'd give someone that comes into the industry is, if your goal is to be the best, find out who the best is. Like, who's the best door knocker, who gets the most sales, who does their production correctly, who's the top dog. Is figure out how to be that guy's friend. He might hate you for a while. You might have to take, it might take time to make friends with him, but eventually, once you get friends with him, you become who you're surrounded by. So I think that's one big thing that could help a lot of people.
I think a blind spot that young professionals may have is that they're overzealous about what they know. The most important thing that I think you can do is listen to other people around you. The second thing I think you can do is always say your words with honey, because you never know when you're going to eat them. And third, document. Never fail to hire the best of the best, because at the end of the day, documentation wins the claim.
Never sacrifice, your beliefs, your morals over $1, because in the end, the dollars come and go.
First, delegation. I think for myself and probably a lot of people, we just don't delegate enough. So today I start by asking myself, what can I delegate? What can I automate? And what can I eliminate from my schedule each day so that I can get freed up and focus on the most important things.
We make a tremendous amount of money in a short amount of time. I would say just be very financially educated. If you're not financially educated, get educated. Maybe even have somebody, an accountant, look after your money, because I can't tell you how many times that I've been through this and other people have been through this. We make a lot of money and then it's just gone. We sacrifice a lot of things for this industry, and to not reap the rewards is kind of like frustrating. So that would be my advice to my younger self.
Being involved with your people inside of your business is very important. And I would suggest that to anyone, to spend as much time as you can with the people that are involved in your business.
Have a growth plan. And with the growth plan is not only how are we getting there, but also what happens when we get there, right? Like, look beyond that first goal, because that was one of our blind spots, was having the goal. But then once we got there, how do you sustain the goal? And you really have to think outside of the box when you're doing that, because there are so many unforeseen things coming your way when you're heading down the path at 100 miles an hour.
During the fall, I had stress and anxiety, obviously, but one thing that did occur that I didn't anticipate and I didn't have an explanation for was I had physical fatigue. Like, it was like every day at 3 p.m. I was going down for a nap. It doesn't matter if I drank 15 shots of espresso, I was going out, and I was going out hard. And it usually was for at least an hour to 2 hours each day. When it was all said and done and I was ready to get moving again, it was fascinating to me that I couldn't get out of first gear. So one day I was at the gym and I was playing basketball with a couple guys, and after we were done, they said, let's go work out. I looked at them, I was like, you're crazy. I'm done. I'm like, physically, I have nothing left in the tank. So when I told them I was gonna go home, this guy, Gary Brecka, who later became my friend, he's the owner of the Streamline Medical Group, he says, man, listen, you shouldn't be this tired at your age, mid-30s. Normally I'd be dismissive and say, listen, dude, you don't know me, shut up. But this guy was, I think about 50 years old at the time, and he was lean, mean, and he was fired up, like fired up. Gary was fired up. So I was intrigued by it. I was drawn to his enthusiasm about what he was doing, and that was the beginning of our relationship.
So my name's Gary Brecka. I'm a human biologist and a biohacker. I believe that most issues that face the human body have to do with a lack of raw materials. They don't actually have to do with pathology and disease. I'm the CEO of Streamline Wellness, and we are a wellness clinic that is focused on improving the optimal health of our patients. When I looked at Justin's labs, I knew that there was nothing other than his own stubborn will that was dragging him out of bed every day. In fact, I knew that just for him to break the plane of the door at the gym was an exercise in absolute brute strength. His testosterone was one of the lowest levels that my clinical team had seen in several years. In fact, for a male, testosterone should be somewhere between 264 and about 916. And Justin's testosterone was 59. It was 2-digit testosterone, and we hadn't seen that in a very long time. So there was no wonder he was exhausted. You see, because this hormone, contrary to popular belief, has a lot of roles in the human body, but one of the main roles is to put pressure on the bone marrow to create new red blood cells and hemoglobin, which carry the oxygen that give you energy. So when people say, when I'm low on testosterone, I feel like I'm low on energy, really what they're saying is, I'm low on testosterone, so I'm low on red blood cells and hemoglobin, which carry oxygen, which give me energy. So the fact that he was trying to accomplish so much to me was like, wow, here's a guy that's tethered to an anchor that's really trying to pull this anchor through his goals of life. And I knew that we were going to cut that rope. And I knew that Justin was going to come alive in a way that maybe he didn't even understand was going to happen in such a short period of time. And now that I look back and I understand how far he's come, I'm not really surprised based on his lab values in the beginning and his lab values now.
Man, so nowadays, I learned a lot from everything, the rise, the fall, the whole thing. One of the important things that I've learned is to not have all your eggs in one basket. So today I'm still doing the same thing where I'm selling projects, but now it's just the big stuff. I sell large condominium projects or multifamily or whatever it is. And the size projects are some of the biggest in the country because I'm competitive and it has to be the biggest. But then also, I'm also doing consulting with other companies where I'm helping them with their blind spots, and I can go in and I can take a look at their processes or their procedures, the level of leadership to help them grow and help them realize some of the issues they may have that they don't even know they have. We started a company called Able Studios, so now we're doing film and we're doing marketing for other firms. We're also throwing conferences around the country with the intent of helping guys grow. Nothing's changed in terms of like the core ideas and philosophies for myself and the company. In the end, we will measure our success based on the amount of people that we help become successful. So it's still our core operating system, it's still our core principles. The big thing I'm excited for is we're doing things I believe that hasn't been done in the industry before. There's been a few different things that I believe have been turning points of the industry. You have guys like Marty Haight, who kind of made our industry kind of what it is today. Then you have guys like Rich and Matt Spanton, who created Acculinks, who brought organization and the CRM. Guys like Anthony Del Medico, who has a big conference. He wasn't the first one to make a conference, but I think his was large. So it kind of changed the industry. I'm not saying what I'm doing today is going to change the industry, but I do believe I'll be the catalyst of something that's to come. I believe that we're working on some pretty cool stuff, and there's a correction that's coming to the industry. I promise you that, and I think that I'll at least influence that, and I'll be part of it. So I'm excited for it. This industry has been good to me. I've grown up in so many ways. I came in as a hot mess of a kid. I've matured in some ways. I still have a lot of areas I need to develop in and grow in. I've met some amazing people, like Tara, who's been huge for me. She's taught me so much as far as commercial, how to conduct yourself as a business person in that arena. To guys like Greg Stein, who just really exemplified to me what a true leader is. Steve Kaganovsky, who I owe a lot to, who brought me in the industry. To the legends like George Keys, to the big names like Anthony Del Medico or the Paul Reeds of the world. Just all the people that I've met. Even in my personal story, like Devin Smith, who was a huge person, Jason Candelish, and anyone else I didn't mention. But I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for each of them. At the end of the day, it's all about relationships. So if you want to be rich in life, not in terms of like finances, but if you want to be rich in life as far as like wholesome rich, then it's all about making deposits within people, right? So anyone that I meet within the industry, I try to make a deposit and I don't fool myself with the business transaction. I'm not trying to give someone something in return for something unless I clarify that, right? So I try to make a lot of deposits within people because it's not necessarily about giving back. Giving back implies I have to get some shit first, right? I have to give first. And what I realized is if I give first to guys within the industry, it comes back. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to overcome a lot of the devastating obstacles, is because no matter what, it doesn't matter if things are going well or things aren't going well, I still give. And that's one of the constants of my life that I try to follow. To wrap things up, I have one final message to that select group of people that have the audacity to do something huge, to go against the grain, and to contradict what the naysayers may have to say. And this is it. While in pursuit of your huge goals, dreams, and aspirations within this industry, and when shit gets hard and shit hits the fan, and it will, there's gonna be some times in your career where problems are gonna be huge and it's gonna be seemingly very difficult to overcome. But just remember that we can overcome any problem, obstacle, or whatever issue that lies in front of us. You know the motto. We can, we will, we are able. Let's go.
Every day is spent trying to slang enough to pay the rent. Since the early bird gets the worm, he don't wait for shit. Whatever you want, from big weight all the way to Knicks. Stay out late cause his son's mother makes him sick. Wish he never had a baby with that crazy bitch. Can't cook a lick, but she knows how to bake a brick. Learned that trick watching a mom in 86. Never met a father, but heard he was a player pimp. They came up the same way, they both hate cops. Raised around rock that was a punk or Aesop. In and out of prison, his pops was a parolee. Wet had him wilder than Rottweilers with no leash. Never met his grandson cause they really don't speak. Last he heard, he was homeless on these cold streets. No 401ks or pension plans for OGs, but he still remembers the last thing that he told him. We live fast cause the good die young. Gotta hustle to get cash in the hood I'm from. We only fear God, jailer, crooks with guns, and don't speak to police like we took out our tongues. In the streets, we live fast cause the good die young. Gotta hustle to get cash in the hood I'm from. We only fear God, jailer, crooks with guns, and don't speak to police like we took out our tongues. In the streets.